Welcome to Syntax. On this Monday Hasty Treat, we're going to be talking about how we solved a problem that we had using some interesting technology. We had some fonts in our application, and our app is open source, as you know, but these fonts are licensed, and you got to keep these licensed fonts secure. So we built a miniature little font serving platform to help us serve fonts with a whitelist across any of the sites that I'm using personally. My name is Scott Tolinsky. I'm a developer from Denver, and with me as always is Wes Boss. What's up, Wes?
Hey, not too much. Excited to be here. I'm up at the cottage now for a good chunk of the summer, which I'm pretty excited about. So I got my cottage office ready to rock. Yeah. So if you hear beavers or something like that, that's probably just outside. I got the windows open right now.
You guys got loons up there? Is that a thing? You got loons?
Tons of loons. Yeah, you kidding? Is that a thing? Our money is called the loony.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We got lots of
it
them.
is.
Actually,
oh, man. Oopsies.
The loons are really interesting because there's only one loon per kind of like area of the lake. So every summer you hope that like a loon stays in your area, right? Because they're like mean. Loons, like if there's two loons in the area, they'll like spear each other's brains out. Yeah, there's some gnarly. If you ever want to like go down a YouTube rabbit hole, like search up like loons being aggressive. But,
I love the sounds they make. They're fantastic.
Yeah, we love. Apparently, that sound is when they're stressed out.
Oh,
so
wow.
Every time we hear it, we're like, oh no. And it's usually when there's like a sea-doo, or we just had Canada Day yesterday. They hate the fireworks, but every year we see like two little loon babies just trailing the mom, and we're happy to see it.
Wow. You know what else I'm happy to see? I'm happy to see that Sentry has put together a behind the code discussion with backend experts. What's so cool about this is it's going to be coming up soon after you're listening to this. So July 16th, we'll have a link in the show notes. It's a Tuesday at 10 Mountain Time. So what is that? 9 o'clock
Mountain
Pacific time? Yeah. 12
Nobody knows what Mountain
Eastern.
Time is. Either give us Eastern or Pacific.
Well, you know what? It's showing the time zone I'm in, and I'm trying to do this on the fly here. Okay, so it's 9 Pacific, 12 Eastern, and this is going to be awesome because it has a bunch of folks that have been on the show, but even some folks that haven't, just really brilliant people. So Paul Copplestone, as you listen to on Syntax, the CEO and founder of Supabase, Taylor Otwell, the Lambo man himself, the founder of Laravel, and Yagiz Nizipli, who is on here. He's a perf expert and a Node TSC member. He works for Sentry now and has made some really incredible
he's got some cool
things happen.
Updates.
Yeah,
that should be a good one.
Yeah, if you want to get some intelligence from the brightest minds in the space, check it out. We'll have a link in the show note. You can sign up and give it a watch. It's going to be really neat. So let's get into the problem here. What's going on? What happened? Well, nothing really happened. We just have licensed fonts in our application, as many of you do. You know, you purchase a font license, and sometimes that licensee has a way to serve that font itself, and you just use that. Other times you're just using Google Fonts, right? But like, what about not having Google Fonts? What about just loading the font when there's a font that is licensed? Now, one of the problems that people don't often talk about with Google Fonts, and this is not necessarily related to the licensing issue, is that Google, they put tracking into those font scripts. And because of using Google Fonts, you didn't have to have a cookie banner. Just something to be aware of, that hosting your own fonts, even if they're downloaded initially from somewhere else, can be a good thing. Now, many times it's just as easy as dropping that font into your static folder and loading that bad boy up directly on your server with some caching, whatever. However, because our fonts are licensed, we don't want to throw them into our repo. And anybody can just search GitHub for our licensed fonts and download them directly from there. So I took this as a fun little challenge to make something.
Have you ever gotten a DMCA from a company for having something licensed in a GitHub repo?
I haven't, but I'm surprised that I haven't, because I'm sure I did.
I had a premium plugin at one point that I was like, it was like a starter, right? And then the people who own the premium plugin, they're like, hey, they sent a DMCA. They didn't even ask me to take it down. They just DMCA'd it.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that takes it like out of the Git history. Probably that's why, right? It probably scrubs the Git history from being in there. And I realized, oh, yeah, you probably shouldn't be doing that type of thing. The fonts one is really tricky though, because sometimes you do want it to be part of your source code, right? I have some fonts in my render, and I always get like these, like, you're running out of bandwidth emails from them where I like just squeak in under the month, and I'm thinking like, I probably shouldn't have things like fonts being served up by my compute. Those are better to put in like a CDN, or at least put a CDN in front of it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of strategies here, and I'll talk about some of the things that I thought about or tried, and we can talk about if the decision I went with was ultimately the right one, because none of these decisions are permanent. You can always change things. So what I made is a quick little font server using Cloudflare Pages. Now, I initially wrote this thing with just a straight up worker, and I'll pop over to that code. As you can see, workers are great for doing little things, but the moment I started writing HTML templates and strings that started to look like this was the moment I was like, maybe I need routing, I need pages, I need a little bit more here. And I think the concern initially for me, considering I didn't have a ton of experience with Cloudflare workers in general, and I don't even do that much with serverless functions, to be honest, was what's the difference practically between Cloudflare Pages function and a worker, speed-wise? And it turns out functionally there's no difference there. They both function the exact same as far as Cloudflare is concerned. So I wasn't taking a performance hit by turning this into a Pages function, so therefore I converted this into a SvelteKit repo, of course. Now, it does feel like that could be considered to be like overkill for something like this, but what you got to understand is at the end of the day, ultimately I had like a couple of pages. One, to be able to manage the whitelist for the fonts, because I wanted to be able to choose where I'm serving these things to, but also I wanted to be able to have individual functions, which are, Cloudflare functions, and that can be done with a simple path server.ts. So in something like SvelteKit with the routing system, you're just creating a route, and that route is going to essentially function exactly like a Cloudflare function is, because that's the way it bundles itself up, given the Cloudflare adapter here. So it's not like I'm running a big old node application to do this, even though it is using something like SvelteKit, right?
Yeah, I was always surprised that Cloudflare Workers doesn't have the idea of like folder-based routing, like a very light routing where you want to have a couple files, and I always reach for like a Hano.js or something like SvelteKit, just because you want a little bit of baked-in routing and some helpers.
Yeah, because when I did it with workers, this was it. You grab the path name, you're splitting the path name and checking the path for different strings, just in case. But with this, again, I could use the various SvelteKit routing stuff, and it just worked really nice. So this was really super easy. Cloudflare has a SvelteKit starter, so you just start with that if you wanted to use that type of thing. But again, there's starters for everything. So I decided to throw this into a worker and a function. And the first question might be like, why not a bucket? Because a bucket seems like it makes a lot of sense, right? You just dump the font in the bucket, you set up your access rules, you access the font. That's the easy way, I think.
Yeah.
And that works perfectly fine. In fact, I actually did that at one point here as part of my testing. It worked just fine.
And a bucket, to be clear, a bucket is like a place where you can dump files, right? And have control over it. So like a font file, .waf2 is the one that we're all using right now. That would be good to just throw into a bucket.
Yes. Yeah. And this also was a big change for us too. We're not going to get too much into this aspect on this episode, but we went from loading like 6 or 7 fonts, Wes. I don't even know because you were on vacation for this. We went from loading 6 or 7 fonts to one variable font. And what I learned is that variable fonts have a whole host of crazy new properties that you have to learn, like new syntax. Like if I just set like font weight 900 on a variable font, it's not guaranteed to work the way I want it to, depending on how the variable font was created. So I have a lot of interesting things I learned about variable fonts involved in this. Okay, so I put these into a worker. And what about the fonts themselves? I actually put those into KV, which is a key value store, which was an interesting approach because I was able to upload the font itself with a Wrangler KV key put with my namespace ID and my ID, and then I just passed in the font. And guess what it did? It is up those right into KV. And to be clear, KV is not like a file store. It's like a key value store. So these things were able to be stored as they're small enough to be able to store as an actual value and then caches that value and send along as a string data. So I did this approach just to see how it would work, right? And I got to say, after tracking performance, so I loaded up from a bucket, from KV via the worker, and then from KV via Cloudflare Pages. And consistently, the worker and the pages were faster than loading it from a bucket. I don't know if that's hard fact. I ran refresh without cache couple hundred times and checked the results. It was always faster. That doesn't mean that it's necessarily the fastest approach or something. Google Fonts is like crazy fast. But ultimately, the key here is that we have a whitelist. Whitelist is stored as a key value in the same key KV. When a request comes in, I check to make sure the origin is in the allowed domains, which is in our KV whitelist, and then I go on and serve it with some hard caching. Now, the caching part is something that I'm going to want to get your advice on, Wes, because we had some weird issues with caching, and I was occasionally having to turn off the CDN cache or dump the entire Cloudflare CDN cache at various points. But this is pretty much the whole thing. Now, to manage the whitelist, again, the whitelist is just a KV store. So what I did to manage the whitelist is I'll pop open, here we go. And basically, I'm loading up the whitelist, I'm fetching it with a normal fetch request, and I'm throwing it into just a text area. Now, for security, what I did is I hard-coded an access pin, which is an ENV pin that only I know. So anytime I want to update the whitelist, instead of having auth, I just type in my pin, hit enter, it checks to make sure that pin is correct with the ENV pin. Now, as long as that ENV variable doesn't get leaked, I'm golden, right? Because, it's not a hash password. That password's being encrypted already. It's being stored on Cloudflare. I don't have to worry about that becoming publicly available or anything. So this was a nice little super easy auth, just a easy way to lock this whitelist down. But that's really it. I'm in here, I'm running a function. That function is really just hitting a fetch where I'm posting to the whitelist. I'm stringifying the whitelist, and on that the whitelist page, which is right here, all I'm doing with that for the post request here is I'm running platform env Scott's fonts put. I'm putting the fonts into the KV as domains, and I'm stringifying them. That's it. This couldn't be an any more simple application. There's no database beyond the KV, which is just a few values.
Okay.
Not a lot of stuff happening here. But at the end, the result is we get full control over where we host these fonts and which fonts are served and uploaded. And then I can have my own little private font store, right?
So this is essentially stopping anybody from taking our hosted fonts and then just hot linking them in their own website, because we're paying for the bandwidth and we're paying for the actual font. So if somebody were to try and import the font directly into their own website, the origin request would not match your allow list, and it would not send it, right?
That's correct, yeah. And that's the intention here. So was this a overkill approach to something that could have been solved with a bucket? Absolutely. But you know what? I think these types of projects are like the ones that we have the most fun doing, right? We have this fun little problem of font hosting. I'm going to try to build a custom font hosting service. And how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to throw the fonts into a key value store and see how that performs. And the truth is, it performed really well. So a lot of really interesting stuff. And I have all this code public if you want to give it a try or check it out. Now, Wes, I have some questions for you as being the JavaScript dude around here. So one of the things that we're doing here is we're handling the whitelisting in code. A lot of it is there's an actual whitelist, and we're checking is allowed domain using the origin, which actually, that's a whole nother thing. Apparently, Safari doesn't reliably set the origin header. I don't know if you knew this.
Oh, really?
Yes, you can't rely on the origin header for Safari. So I just had to use refer, which was reliable enough for Safari here.
Okay.
But
I think I went into this once. I had somebody submit like a bug bounty to me where I I forget what it was. Essentially, I was like checking if the domain name had like westboss.com in it, but then somebody figured out that you could do like westboss.com dot whatever,
Yeah.
and they were able to like embed my videos or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I have to actually check. And that I moved it from just like a checking strings. I moved it to like a proper URL parser in JavaScript, because that was frustrating. But sorry, that wasn't your question though. What was it?
No, that wasn't my question. But the question is, do you think the whitelisting stuff that I'm doing here in JavaScript is worth it? Or would it be better off just to have that all being done with the whitelist and inside of our allow origin header? So like, should I remove the whitelisting JavaScript and have whitelisting being done entirely through cores instead?
Yeah. That's a good question. I would think so, because
I guess in this case, here's a thought I'm just having right now live, because I am loading the font here. I'm loading the font as an array buffer here. So like, if I'm quitting early because they're not allowed, that's stopping this font from being loaded as an array buffer before being passed into a request. So that is saving me some compute, is it not?
yes. I'm just trying to wonder, like, does a font face respect a cores issue?
Yes, very much
it does.
so.
Okay, because a script tag does
Yes,
not.
it does, because I had quite a bit of issues with cores in this. So
Okay, good. Man, I don't know. Like, sorry, the question was, is this, would it be enough just to use the allow origin? I would think like if the platform has it built in, I would probably lean on that. And I think the only reason people sort of would opt out of some of the platform features is because if they wanted a little bit more control over that type of thing, especially because you're caching it forever,
yes.
Which means that if you ever want to update the allow origin, you can't unless you were to change the file name of the font, which also makes sense, I guess. Like the whole idea is like cache forever. And if you update the font, then change the font name, right? Like put a hash on it.
Well, so that's a whole nother thing. So the one thing that we're saving by doing the whitelist is this line. That's it, loading the array buffer. But so like you mentioned, we are caching the origin forever, but I'm serving these things to several different websites. So that's where the very accept encoding refer header comes in. Now,
oh, okay.
I don't know if this is the right solution to this. So if you're out there and you're a header whiz, and I'm serving this to multiple different origins, the big question is, how do you efficiently cache this to multiple different origins? I guess the answer might be, Wes, to have a unique URL for each whitelisted site. Like maybe that's it. Maybe you append something with the whitelisted site to the URL, and that's how you get around the caching there.
Oh, I see. Can you put multiple URLs in an allow origin?
No,
I
don't think so. Maybe worth Googling. Yeah.
Let me. No, you're right. It's based on one each. So
yes. So
right.
You know what? It was a tough problem with this course, and I don't know if this is the final best correct solution here, but this is currently working for us. So if you're out there and you know your headers in and out, and you have a better solution for this, I'm thinking as we talk through this, which I think is a good thing to do, I think maybe having a custom URL, because all it would be doing would be appending a URL string. You parse part of that string, and then now you have a custom string URL per website.
Okay. And how does this work on like localhost then?
Localhost is just whitelisted.
Okay. So it does allow it. Okay.
Yeah. Which at that point, if you want to load up our site, and no one is going to, the long story about like stealing a font file is no one's ever going to prevent you from stealing a font file. There's an endless amount of ways to get to a font file, even in these scenarios where you're trying to protect it. That's not going to happen. You know, if a font file is being loaded, people can access it. So loading it up in localhost and downloading the fonts, not a huge deal. You're still breaking the license if you use it. So.
Yeah, the way that people get around people stealing fonts is they do not serve up all of the weights. They only serve up the WAF2, which can be tricky if you want to try to convert that back to something that works in like a Figma, if you want to like design with it. And then also people they'll figure out what characters need to be used and only compile the font for that much. Like there's some of these font websites, and I was always really curious, like how do these font websites allow you to test it on the website, but also get you to buy it? And it's really interesting because what you type in, like testing 1 2 3, it will go off and compile a version of the font only for that amount of characters, and then bring it back. So there's some
or it
pretty
will render
tricky
in
stuff.
Canvas too. Yeah, sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I always hate that because you can't like select it and you can't see the browser rendering, and it doesn't like wrap and things like that. So some of the really nice websites allow you to like actually use it on there, which is probably very frustrating for like font foundries, that there's nothing built in, like there's no DRM built into the browser for specific fonts.
Yeah. That's a touchy topic right there. Ultimately, again, you're not going to be able to prevent somebody from getting a font no matter what. So, hey, it's all about using
support
it
your foundry.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you're out there and you have a better solution for this for headers, let me know. I thought this was just an interesting project, an interesting idea. And if you want to see like maybe what working inside of a worker like this is like to accomplish something like this, the code is all public. We'll have it available in the show notes. That's all I have for you today, Wes. The last little thing might be just to use the fonts. You just load it up with, I think it's fonts.tolin.ski/the font name, bingo bango. As long as the access is good, you're good, and it loads it like a normal font, caches it forever, like I said. Pretty speedy.
Awesome. That's good. We should get that on the syntax domain name. Oh, it's because we got to move the syntax Cloudflare over to the syntax.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. This was a major conversation while you were gone. I was
huge pain of moving Cloudflare. Did I tell you that I had a domain name on Cloudflare and I needed to transfer it to somebody else also on Cloudflare?
Yeah.
And it is not possible at all. The registration, I'm talking about the registration, not the
not the
being
DNS,
not the like being in Cloudflare. So I had to transfer it out of Cloudflare to Hover, and then you have to wait 60 days and then transfer it back over to their Cloudflare. You can obviously use it right away because you can still add it to Cloudflare, but it's
why
was a huge
is
pain.
that?
I'm betting that because Cloudflare has so much fancy stuff around domain names, because like you can have workers attached to a domain name, you can have access control attached to a domain name, you can have like the tunnels, Wrangler stuff. All of the stuff is attached to a domain name, and it might be simple to think like, yeah, let's just move it over. But I think people probably assume that all of the parts of the domain name also move over. So there's currently no way to transfer a domain name over. It will like suck up the DNS and try to like repopulate it. It's very good at that, but the actual ownership of the domain name, you cannot go Cloudflare to Cloudflare account.
Wow. Yeah.
So we don't have that issue with the syntax. Like we sent the syntax domain ownership to whatever Sentry uses, but we have to like, I have a couple workers on there, a couple subdomain names. I got to move all that over, and that just doesn't seem fun. There's some golden rule that should be there. Is like never do anything on your personal account
ever. Yeah.
Just moving it over is a pain.
It always feels like the right thing at the time. Yeah. Like I just need to get this done. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We will catch you later.
Peace.
Peace.